Welcome back to the Barrel Talk Podcast. We're back with another episode of Let's Talk About It. We're doing something a little bit different today's episode. We're going to be talking about one trade idea I have for every single team in the NBA. This is going to be an Eastern Conference video specifically. We're going to have this broken up into two different videos, one with the Eastern Conference, one with the Western Conference, to keep it so it's not such a long video, because I'm going to really be able to go in depth into some of these teams and my mindset going through like why I see these teams making these trades and like their mindset behind it going into this offseason and what they're trying to build for the future. But before we get into it, make sure to leave a like on the video. Helps the channel out a ton if you're an audio listener. I think it'll be easy to kind of follow along, but also have posts on Twitter about how just pictures of the trades I have for every specific team. But going into this, before we start, I didn't do a trade for the Dallas Mavericks or the Boston Celtics, two teams that are in the NBA Finals. Just because I feel like if you went to the finals, there was obviously nothing you needed to trade for this offseason, and they're coming off of going to the finals. So I didn't really have a trade idea for them because they're still actively playing. With the offseason coming up, we have the draft, which is weirdly 2 days, and I feel like, and then you have free agency that starts like a couple of days after that. So that all flows into kind of 1 week. But I've kind of got this idea from Bleacher Report does this one trade idea for every NBA team. I think the Ringer has done this as well. But I just feel like sometimes when I look at some of those articles, I'm like, where's the idea? Like, where's the thought process behind some of these trades? I feel like they're just not really creative enough. And I really tried my best to really be creative with some of these trades. So we're going to be starting out from the bottom to the top of the Eastern Conference. I'm going to be starting out with the Detroit Pistons. I have everything in my notes right here, and on the screen you're going to see me go through the trades on here as well. So when I'm looking at Detroit, building a trade, it's kind of hard because when you're looking at this roster, they don't really have a whole lot that teams like are dying to have. Like you have a $19 million team option from Evan Fournier if you wanted to take that, put him in a trade. Like when you're looking at that, and they don't have a first round pick next year. So with a team that's coming off a historically bad year, like they have no influence or reason why they should try to be bad in a sense, right? So when I'm looking at a trade for them, they need to bring in some talent. They have a $53 million in cap space. I feel like they should use some of that in a trade to kind of bring in somebody that has a larger contract that can help them win right now. I mean, this is an extension year for Cade Cunningham, who's already been in the league for a minute. I know he's had not the healthiest start to his career, but looking at it like this, like it's not beneficial for them to be bad next year, right? Without having their first round pick, like I said. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do this offseason and how aggressive they are to try to really get a competent roster. And then I've also seen like ideas of them kind of trading back from the 5th overall pick, because when I look at this team and when I say like them bringing in talent right away to kind of help them be better next year because they don't have an incentive to be bad, like there's nobody at 5. They're not in a position. I don't think Ricochet falls, which I think is the perfect fit for them because they already have playmakers and initiators on that team, like a Cade Cunningham, like a Jaden Ivey. But it's like they're at 5 and they're not really in the realm unless he somehow falls, and I don't think that's gonna happen. So like looking at that, and then when you're looking at 5, you're like, if a Reed Shepard falls into their lap, he doesn't really fit. Like I said, he fits next to Cade, but you already have Ivy, and Marcus Sasser that are both guards. Like he could possibly be a good fit if you want to go that route, but I think they really need to address the forward position. And in this trade, I don't have them. I do have them trading back because I feel like there are some talents at later in the middle of the first round where I have them trading that probably better suit this team going forward. And I feel like they could trade back, add a talented piece that can help them win now and still draft at 14. I don't feel like for the Pistons there's a guy out there that's going to immediately help them win, immediately help them impact the team at 5. But I feel like there is a guy that they could draft at 14 that isn't such a reach that I feel like could help benefit this team even more. So the trade idea I have for them is getting in contact with the Portland Trailblazers, Jeremy Grant, who was a former Piston. They're going to eat up that 4-year contract because they need somebody that can relieve pressure off Cade Cunningham. It was supposed to be Bogdanovich last year, but I feel like at that point in his career, that was just a tough ask. So looking at that, they're going to add Jeremy Grant, who You can say what you want, have mixed feelings about his contract. Jeremy Grant is still somebody that can give them good production, especially on a team that is desperate for wing depth. In my opinion, he is a great connecting piece because he can score on his own, play defense, rebound, do a little bit of everything. And I feel like it's in Portland to where Portland could better suit them at 5. So you're going to trade down to 14. You're going to give them 5. And I feel like, yep, this is the trade I had for them. Just makes sense for the Portland Trailblazers. They're in a way better position to probably take a Buzelis at 5 compared to the Pistons, because I feel like the Portland Trailblazers in their organization, they're at a point in time now where they're better suited to take a project piece like possibly a Ron Holland or a Buzelis compared to the Detroit Pistons, who can get Jeremy Grant, who can help them immediate impact right now with Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, Jaden Ivey. But at 14, I feel like if you trade down, you can go get another NBA-ready guy who can really help and be a good connecting piece, and get a guy like Tristan da Silva, who can be another wing spot-up guy for them. I just feel like they need to go focus more on NBA-ready talent right now compared to project pieces that are going to take a couple years to develop. I think if they get Jeremy Grant, you get a Tristan da Silva. Those are two guys that are going to help you immediately, I feel like, next to a Cade Cunningham, a Jaden Ivey. And that's not even saying, because like you still looking at their cap space, you added Jeremy Grant, you still have $23 million to go add another veteran or two in the free agency market, which is kind of filled with a lot of veteran role players that I feel like could want to get paid. And looking at this, I mean, you still have a ton of stuff to do with this roster for sure. But I feel like this pivots you into a better position of really being better next year compared to, like you say, you don't have your first round pick, so there's no incentive to be bad. And if you get another project guy who's not ready, you're not helping Cade Cunningham, who's your franchise star, out at all. And if you're the the Blazers, you get off the Jeremy Grant contract and you're in a better position, like I said, to take a project player at 5, and then you also have 7. And I mean, in this trade, you could also probably, if you're Detroit, probably try to pick up this 34th overall pick, just to give you another second to possibly draft another guy that can come and help you right away, because I feel like the second round is filled with guys that can come into the league right now and really be key rotational pieces for them. But next team I have is the Washington Wizards, a team that's in another interesting spot, because this is right where I would have, in this mindset, it's kind of all connected a little bit, but it's kind of not at the same time with my thought process, because when I talked about the Pistons, I like Risha Shea to the Pistons, but I don't think he falls past Washington. And I think this is a good spot for Washington, who could move Kyle Kuzma this offseason. And I feel like the main thought processes with them is like, oh, they're going to take Nikola Topic. I think they could pick up, because they have another late first at 26. So 26 and 52. I have them getting another first-round pick in this year's draft right here from the Phoenix Suns. So looking at this, you're going to add Nasir Little to your rotation in Washington. You're going to give them Tyus Jones. The Suns are in desperate need of a point guard that is more of a veteran in this league. Tyus Jones, one of the better backup guards in the league. He would be starting next to a Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant. I feel like it's a great fit for him. So looking at a Tyus Jones right here, you're going to end up getting Phoenix's first round pick this year, which has been already rumored to be on the block as well. So you get 2, 22, and 26 in this year's draft. And instead of taking Nikola Topic, I think you stay with Risha Shea at number 2, and then you go get a Tyler Kolek at 22, who is, in my opinion, an NBA-ready guard, probably the second best playmaker, arguably the first best playmaker in this draft next to Nikola Topic. And I feel like he's a great steady guard who you can pair up with a Risha Shea, and I feel like you could even go with Zach Edey at 26 to have a fun experiment with that, next to a Jordan Poole, and you're going to move Kyle Kuzma for more assets probably this offseason, next to a Denny, next to a Bilal. Like, I feel like Topic is such I'm maybe not the highest on Topic, because I think you could get Risha Shea, who has more upside and maybe fit better with this team, and then you can go into the back half of that first round and get a Tyler Kolek that could definitely help you from day one and kind of really be your starting guard going into next year, depending on what you do in free agency or what you trade Kyle Kuzma for. But if we're looking at this trade with the Phoenix Suns, they get their point guard in Tyus Jones in a sign and trade, which I think could easily be done. Nasir Little goes to the Wizards, gives them some more depth at the wing spot, who's still relatively young, 3 years left on his deal, and the 22nd overall pick. You could argue in this trade, kind of I'm thinking in the light of it, like, maybe you add in like maybe if you can get the money work like a Rashawn Holmes or a Marvin Bagley to give them more depth for the Suns. Like maybe you could try to get a Corey Kispert in the deal just because he doesn't really fit your timeline and he's older a little bit. Just kind of talking off the dome right here with what they could possibly add to this trade. Tyus Jones and Corey Kispert to the Suns. But as of right now, the official trade I have is Tyus Jones for Nasir Little, 22nd pick go to Washington. Suns get Tyus Jones in this trade, get their point guard that they really desperately need in Phoenix. Then, next team we're going on to is the Charlotte Hornets. Charlotte Hornets. See, this is a really interesting team to kind of mock a trade for because they're in the same position like Detroit. Like, when you look at their roster, and they don't have the same amount of cap space as Detroit, they are in a very interesting spot because you have LaMelo and Brandon Miller, who are your 1 and 2. But they don't really have anything enticing on their roster that another contending team would want for another first-round pick, I feel like. I mean, depending on Miles Bridges and what his market value is, I don't really know. I think I tried to do like a mock one where you trade with the Lakers and get their first-round pick at 17 and like Jared Vanderbilt. I tried to experiment with that, but I don't really know what Miles Bridges' market is at this point with all the off-court stuff, so I kind of stayed away from that. You have Davis Bertans, who has that $16 million a year that you could use. But other than that, you have a kind of a mixed bag on the roster. You have your 1 and 2. You have the 6th overall pick, where I like you getting a nice connecting piece like possibly a Ron Holland or a Stephon Castle. So looking at that, and I have my mock that I did a couple weeks ago right here. And I have them getting Ron Holland out of the G League, who could be a great connecting piece who can do a lot of things really well next to a Brandon Miller and a LaMelo Ball. But I also could see a Jacoby Walter at the 2 next to a LaMelo and Brandon Miller. I also have like Stephon Castle if he slides. Like a couple different ways that they could definitely go. But in this, I have them getting somebody that can help them now, somebody that they could put at the power forward spot. I have them getting Cam Johnson. And then in this trade, it's with the Brooklyn Nets, so they're going to be sending out Davis Bertans, the 42nd pick in this year's draft, and a 2027 top 3 protected pick to the Nets, who could really start to build back up that draft capital for the future. You're getting Cam Johnson off your roster, and I feel like this could be an easy cop-out situation for the Nets, who gave him an extension off of a down year that he just had because he really doesn't fit with what they do. I feel like you put him next to a LaMelo Ball, who's a phenomenal playmaker who likes to get up and down. I feel like Cam Johnson can get back to what he was doing in Phoenix, which is what made him so valuable in the first place. He has 3 years left on that contract, $23 million per. You get Davis Bertans on 1 year. You get a 2nd overall pick. Like I said, with the Nets, I'm going to keep on saying throughout this video, is like the Nets don't have a pick in this year's draft. So you add a 42nd overall pick, and then you add a top 3 protected pick from Charlotte in 2027, which, depending on the trajectory of Charlotte, that could hit for you. That could be a lottery pick for you outside of the top 3, depending on what Charlotte does in the future. That could be a nice little pick that you have in your treasure chest later down the line in the future. And this gives you the first-round pick from Charlotte, first-round pick from Philadelphia, protected 1 through 8. The Phoenix pick in 2027, no protected. And then you get a first-round Houston pick that has like a swap on it for another year. I think it's 2026. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I feel like this is a good trade for the Nets because I feel like it bails them out on the Cam Johnson situation, adds draft capital for them. But in terms of the Hornets side of things, from the Hornets perspective, you add a sniper like Cam Johnson that could fit perfectly and space the floor next to a Brandon Miller and a LaMelo Ball that can play the 3 and the 4, depending on what kind of lineups you want to do with LaMelo and Brandon Miller. I feel like he's a perfect fit, and he have 3 years to work with him on his contract. But I feel like it's a great trade for the Charlotte Hornets. Next team, Toronto Raptors. Another team in a enticing situation. They have some cap space to use. Gary Trent Jr. is a free agent. This is going to be the next full year of Scotty Barnes, him being the face of the franchise, if you will, because they have quickly RJ Barrett. Bruce Brown's probably gone. Jakob Poeltl, who knows what they're going to do with him. But looking at it in terms of what they have going into this year's draft, they their pick is the 8th overall pick, and it goes to San Antonio. But they do have the first round pick of Indiana. They have an early second rounder. But I feel like they could really value having 2 middle first round picks and really building out this roster. And RJ quickly and Scotty Barnes. They're a team that could really have a quicker rebuild than a lot of people think. Because you got to think, Scotty Barnes has already been in the league a little bit. Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett have both been in the league for some time now. RJ Barrett's still only 23 years old. Like, you have a Bruce Brown that you can flip into something. You have a Jakob Pertl you can flip into something. I personally like Gary Trent Jr. has a fit on this roster, depending on what he wants in free agency. But I feel like they're missing that big spot. I think Jakob Pertl just doesn't really fit what they want to do. I feel like this is a team that really needs an athletic big at that position. And this is a trade I have to kind of help them gear up to do that. So I have them trading with the Lakers. I have simple trade. Lakers get Jakob Pertl. For the Lakers' perspective, they have been lacking that size behind Anthony Davis that can play next to Anthony Davis and also play behind him off your bench. I feel like the Jackson Hayes experiment just didn't really work too well. And I feel like this could be a great trade piece for the Lakers, who don't really they're still in the world where they're competing. I don't think LeBron leaves LA. So I think they're in a world where they need to try to add some depth, which is what they've been reporting wanting to do this offseason, to add more depth and not go after a star. Jakob Pertl gives them a starting caliber center, possibly off their bench for them. So looking at that, they're going to give them the 17th overall pick this year. So it gives Toronto 17 and 19 and 31, but I have 31 going to the Lakers for a possible another second round pick to add some more depth to their roster. And you're basically trading Jakob Pertl, who doesn't fit your timeline anymore, and a second to get another first rounder this year, which I think could be very valuable to the fitting pieces and connecting pieces for the Raptors. And for the Lakers' point of things, the Bronny rumors are always out there. They pick up another second from Toronto, which I think makes sense. So looking at what they have to do here, I also have D'Angelo Russell in this trade. That's who I had in this trade. So D'Angelo Russell, so here's what the trade looks like right here. Jakob Pertl and the 31st overall pick in this year's draft to the Lakers for D'Angelo Russell and the 17th overall pick. You're getting D'Angelo Russell, who can be a part of your rotation for sure. I feel like Emmanuel Quickly can also thrive playing a little bit off the ball as well, depending on what they want to do. If they want to run like point Scotty Barnes, I don't know. But D'Angelo Russell, I've also experimented with this kind of same like base of this trade with a team like Philadelphia, who could use another ball handling guard that could operate the pick and roll because they have all the money in the world this offseason. So I also have a kind of like a part 2 to this trade, I guess, kind of with what I experimented with, but I stayed with this one just because it was a lot simpler. But D'Angelo Russell, I could feel like be flipped to like a team like the Sixers for a later first down the line, or depending on if you want to package D'Lo and Bruce Brown, which I think I did for the Philadelphia 76ers, could be interesting, but I wanted to keep it simple, wanted to keep it with this. So the final trade is the Raptors getting D'Angelo Russell, like I said, could be flipped. 17th overall pick, Jakob Pertl, 31st goes to the Lakers. And with that 17th overall pick and 19, you basically have close to back-to-back picks. I love Kelly Ware. If he slides to Toronto, I feel like he can be a great athletic big that has floor spacing potential next to a Scotty Barnes. And then looking at who I had for the mock for the Raptors, I had him getting Devin Carter if he slides. He's a great guard that can fit next to Emmanuel Quickly in the backcourt or come off the bench for an Emmanuel Quickly. So if you're Toronto and you add Devin Carter and Kelly Ware, two guys that are NBA ready, I mean, the rebuild could be a lot faster than what people are anticipating here in Toronto. Now going back to my notes, next team, Brooklyn Nets. This is the big one. This is a big one for the Brooklyn Nets. A lot of different avenues that they could go, and this I've already had Cam Johnson get traded for them to the Hornets. So looking at what I have them doing, so I've heard the rumors about them getting their first-round picks back from the Houston Rockets, or them getting their first-round picks back for the Suns' first-round picks that were involved in the Kevin Durant trade. I feel like that would have been an easy way for you to initiate and start your rebuild. But I feel like if you try to do it now, it might be a little too late, and I feel like the Rockets might get stingy with it. I feel like that was a once kind of offer for them to kind of get their picks back, but it didn't happen. But I still have them trading with the Rockets. It's still going to be centered around Mikal Bridges, but I have a different mindset of this, right? So looking at this, if I'm the Rockets, Sengun is your franchise guy. I love Jabari Smith Jr.'s fit next to him defensively. I love them having a Fred VanVleet. I love them having a Dylan Brooks. I think Steven Adams, if you keep him, is a phenomenal backup if he's healthy next year, if you decide to keep him next to his behind a Sengun. Amen Thompson, Jashawn Tate, Cam Whitmore, Tari Eason, like Aaron Holiday was mainly their backup point guard at times last year. So like looking at them, they have a lot of talent on the roster, young talent that really isn't even didn't even crack the rotation towards the back half of the year. And they're in a position to where they have a roster and they know they're young guys that they want to build around, to where I feel like they're comfortable moving off of a Jalen Green. He's due for an extension. I just don't know if they're committed to a Jalen Green long term when they have a Sengun and a Jabari Smith Jr. and an Amen Thompson who fits so well next to Sengun. Jalen Green obviously still has a lot of potential, but I just feel like the fit with the Rockets and where the Rockets are going, I feel like they would be fine moving off of a Jalen Green for Mikal Bridges. And I do think this trade makes sense for the Nets because you get a young, super high potential guy and Jalen Green, who still is only 22 years old, who you can extend and lock up long term, who can give you kind of a building block for what you want to build towards in the future. And I feel like you're still at a point in time where you're still a little unsure of Cam Thomas. And I feel like I'm leaning more towards them trying to build around the Jalen Green than the Cam Thomas. So that's an interesting question I have for you guys in the comments is if you're the Nets, what do you view Cam Thomas as? Is Cam Thomas somebody that you still feel like is a bench piece, like a 6th man of the year kind of guy that can come off your bench and really fill it up? Or is he somebody that you can really build around? I'm still in between on that whole discussion and discourse around Cam Thomas, but you're adding in this trade, I have you adding a Jalen Green, which I think could be a building block for your future, kind of resets that timeline for you. And you're also sending them Dennis Schroeder, and Dennis Schroeder could be a great backup guard to a Fred VanVleet that can come and give you kind of the same kind of things. And he's only on a 1-year deal. You're getting Mikal Bridges, who still has 2 years left on his deal. Kind of pairing that up with a Fred VanVleet for the Rockets trading for him, because once Fred VanVleet's contract is up, that's when you can extend to Mikal Bridges. Have the money to do that. You still have Jabari Smith. I feel like Mikal Bridges just fits what this team wants to do right now a lot more. You still are keeping a Dylan Brooks, so you're probably running Fred VanVleet, Mikal, Dylan Brooks, Jabari, Sengun, and off your bench you're going to have Dennis Schroeder, possibly Steven Adams. Probably try to bring Jeff Green back, Amen Thompson, Jashawn Tate, Cam Whitmore, Tari Eason. You have a way solid bench with Dennis Schroeder at the helm of that. And then you're also going to give them the 3rd overall pick. So you're going to give them 3, 44, and then their 2025 first right here. I want to say this is the 2025 first that they have of Brooklyn's next year. So this is the final trade, and the Nets get Jalen Green, 3rd overall pick, the 44th overall pick, and the Brooklyn Nets first-round pick, their own first-round pick back next year, which is going to be a loaded draft class for Mikal Bridges and Dennis Schroeder. You're kind of, if you're the Nets, taking Jalen Green over maybe one of your first-round picks that you could get back, which I think is good value because you could just extend him and lock him up long-term, and he's still super, super young, and you kind of already know what you have with him. But with Mikal Bridges going to the Rockets, Dennis Schroeder going to the Rockets, while I'm looking at the Nets, this is the perfect opportunity at 3 to get your point guard, franchise point guard of the future, next to a Jalen Green and a Nikola Topic with a Nicholas Claxton. If you don't move Cam Johnson, can't find a suitor for him, you still have him. This is giving you a way better direction of what you want to do. And you're getting the 3rd overall pick where I think Nikola Topic can go to Brooklyn and really be that franchise guard for you. Next team, we're going on to the Atlanta Hawks. This is the tricky one because there's so many moving parts with the Atlanta Hawks, it seems like this offseason. DeJounte Murray, Clint Capella, Trae Young, Bojan have all been on the block. They're in an interesting spot. I think they definitely need to focus on keeping the 1st overall pick and selecting Alex Sarr. I just feel like that's the no-brainer move right here. So I have them select. That's like my mock. That was in my mock. They select Alex Sarr, number 1, and then I have them getting in contact with a team that this makes sense for them because they are. There's already been talks and rumors about them possibly having to move off of one of their big three in Ant-Man, Rudy, and Kat after a conference finals run. So like, here's let me just walk you through the trade. Karl-Anthony Towns goes to Atlanta. 27th overall pick also goes to Atlanta for DeJounte Murray, Bogdanovich. So now if you're the Hawks, you have a new duo of Kat and Trae Young, which I feel like Kat's going to play a lot better off of Trae Young than DeJounte Murray did. And you have Alex Sarr. So looking at this, you're going to have a Trae Young Kat duo with the first overall pick, adding Alexander Sarr. And when you add him, he's not going to be having so much pressure to be great right away because you already have a Karl-Anthony Towns who's on a contract for a very long time next to a Trae Young, which I think could definitely work offensively. And with what I've seen from Kat defensively, this playoff run, I feel like I'm a little bit more, I guess, safer on his defense. I feel a lot safer on his defense from what I saw this postseason. I feel like he has really grown in that area. But you have a front court where you have a Kat and Alex Sarr, and then you still have, if you're the Hawks, you still have Jalen Johnson. You still have Onyeka Okongwu, who I feel like is. I've been seeing a lot of talk about how Onyeka Okongwu should be starting, but I feel like he is the perfect, versatile big to come off your bench in certain matchups. And with him backing up a Kat and an Alex Sarr, I feel like it could be better for his development. He just needs more playing time. You still have Clint Capella to move off the roster, and you could argue maybe you add in something else and Clint Capella can go back up a Rudy Gobert over there in Minnesota. But I kept it simple with this trade. And for Minnesota side of things, you get 2 guys that can immediately help you now. When you look at Minnesota getting rid of Karl-Anthony Towns, Naz Reid, from what he's done and shown you this playoff run, reigning 6th man of the year, he steps into the starting lineup as your starting power forward. You add DeJounte Murray next to Anthony Edwards in the backcourt, which could be deadly for you. He's just, at this point, a way better offensive player than Mike Conley is, and can give you better defensive production as well. I know he didn't really see it in Atlanta, but if you put him back with a defensive culture in Minnesota, I feel like you can really see the defense that he played in San Antonio come back out. So you're running, and you're looking at Naz Reid, who's like, oh, he's going to be starting. You add one of the best bench scorers in the past couple of seasons, and Bogdanovich from the Hawks, coming off your bench, that adds you a ton of spacing and shot creation. So if you're the Minnesota Timberwolves, you're running out a lineup of DeJounte Murray, Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, and Rudy Gobert. And then you're having Mike Conley move to your bench, which is phenomenal. You have Bogdanovich off your bench, which is great. You have Nickeil Alexander-Walker still. Kyle Anderson's a free agent. You might be able to bring him back. And then if you don't want to go out and get a big, because you still have a late second-round pick where I think you can go get a big to come off your bench, I think Luka Garza is still like a solid option for you off your bench that can give you kind of a different balance compared to Rudy Gobert offensively, because he is super, super skilled offensively, and he can really, I feel like is at this point in time where he can really get real NBA minutes and part of a rotation. But if you're the Hawks from this perspective, this really just gives you better fitting pieces around Trae Young. You get Alex Sarr number 1, you add the 27th overall pick. You still have a DeAndre Hunter, so you're probably running. The only question mark you have is you could possibly you still flip Clint Capella. You can still flip DeAndre Hunter for something. I feel like he's on the block. But when you're looking at this roster, it's like the only thing you're going to be missing is a shooting guard. Not saying you're going to get your starting franchise shooting guard at 27, but you can definitely get somebody like Keyshawn George who has a ton of upside and potential. But this just gives you better fitting pieces around Trae Young. I've heard the discourse around trading Trae Young. I think it's a big, big, big mistake. Because Trae Young talent doesn't come around in the league often. I know the discourse around Trae Young is very up and down, a lot of more negative than positive. But when I'm looking at Trae Young, like, this is a guy that can give you 28 and 12. Like, this is a guy that can give you great, great numbers. It's just the fit on the team has been porous. Like, I feel like if they get the right fitting pieces, they can make a run in the Eastern Conference again. I just feel like the fitting pieces haven't really been there. I was always questionable about DeJounte Murray and him in the backcourt because I feel like they both need the ball. But I feel like Karl-Anthony Towns is somebody who can play perfectly off of Trae Young, and he's still relatively young at 28 years old. And you add an Alex Sarr into that front court, you have really four. Your front court's going to be loaded with Karl-Anthony Towns, Alex Sarr, Jalen Johnson, and Onyeka Okongwu, depending on what you do with Clint Capella as well. So you're going to be looking pretty nice in your front court for Trae Young to utilize with lobs, pick and pops, pick and rolls. It's going to be very interesting to see what the Atlanta Hawks do this offseason. I would personally go and try to get somebody like Karl-Anthony Towns, a big that can really do everything offensively to fit next to a Trae Young. So now looking at next team, Chicago Bulls. Looking at the Bulls here. So looking at what they have to do. I have them getting in contact because I've heard that they are trying to trade up in the draft. I don't really know any of the teams that are going to trade with the Bulls or take on anything, and I don't really think the Bulls have anything crazy to trade back. I feel like they have a lot of guys that could get them first round picks by trading up. I think they're just perfectly fine with staying still for what they could get. So Memphis, I have them getting in contact with Memphis. I have them getting 9th overall pick. And I have the Memphis Grizzlies getting Alex Caruso, Andre Drummond in a sign and trade, and Torrey Craig for Zaire Williams and 39th overall pick. So, if you're Memphis, you're trying to go be a title contender like you were before this past year where a lot of things just went wrong for you. And if you're Memphis, you're going to add in this trade one of the best perimeter defenders in all of basketball, and Alex Caruso, who fits what you want to do. He can space the floor. He can do a little bit of everything. He's a great, phenomenal defender. You adding an Andre Drummond, who I mocked the Grizzlies taking down McClingan in this draft. Maybe they want somebody like Andre Drummond who can just be a pure glass cleaner because Jaren Jackson Jr. is great for his position, but he's not the best rebounder. You add Andre Drummond, who has proven still that he can be one of the best rebounders in the league with the appropriate playing time, and I feel like he still can be a starting caliber big in this league, especially on a team where you have Jaren Jackson Jr. He can be a great lob threat for a John Morant. And you're adding Torrey Craig when you're adding kind of that wing depth spot is kind of up in the air for the Grizzlies. And I feel like they're a team that is ready to compete right now. They have all the foundational pieces. They're getting rid of Zaire Williams, who hasn't really worked out. You're getting rid of the 9th overall pick, who is already reported to be shopped as well. You're giving up a second, 39th overall pick to the Bulls. And if you're the Bulls, you're getting Zaire Williams, who can possibly turn it around. You can turn his career around a little bit. You get the 9th overall pick, who I love them getting Donovan Clingan now to kind of replace Vucevic at some point. And then you're getting the 39th overall pick, so you're going to have 9 and 11 if you're the Bulls. You could easily go a Donovan Clingan and like a Dalton Connect. I love those two for the Bulls. Kind of they're more ready now impact players with a Kobe White and a Dosunmu and DeMar DeRozan, depending on what you do with that. But if you're the Grizzlies from this perspective, like looking at this, it might seem like you're giving up a lot, but Zaire Williams hasn't worked out for you. The 9th pick you're already thinking about trading, and you're giving up a second for one of the best perimeter defenders in all of basketball, a great center I feel like that fits well with this team, and Torrey Craig, who can be a great rotational piece for you. So you're looking at, you probably go Ja, Smart, Bane, Ja, Smart, Bane, Triple J, and then you have Drummond, who can just be a big body. I like Brandon Clark, but I think he's a little bit more of a 4. So you have Ja, Smart, Bane, Triple J, Andre Drummond, and off your bench you're going to have Caruso, Torrey Craig, Luke Kennard, Brandon Clark. Looking at this team, I think you're still going to have Vince Williams, G.G. Jackson. I think looking at this, like you could go pick up a guard in free agency that could really help you, more of a veteran guard. You still have trade exceptions in here as well for what they want to do. But looking at this, the final trade I have for the Bulls, Zaire Williamson, you pick up the 9th overall pick and the 39th overall pick for Alex Caruso, Andre Drummond, and Torrey Craig. 3 guys that don't fit your timeline anymore, and you pick it up to build around Kobe White for the future. Next team I have Miami Heat, another team that's in an interesting spot that is looking to contend with them. This is kind of simple. I think you're in desperate need of a wing that can do a little bit of everything. There's already been reports that Keldon Johnson could be on the move this season, and there are reports that came out today that Devin Vassell and Victor Wembanyama are the only untouchables on the team. Keldon Johnson is a super young player that fits the Miami Heat and what they want to do, even post the Jimmy Butler era, next to a Tyler Hero and a Bam Adebayo. I have the Spurs getting a Duncan Robinson, Kevin Love, and this late first-round pick, 2029, unprotected, going to the Spurs, which this is the trade. Keldon Johnson going to the Heat for Duncan Robinson, Kevin Love, and the 2029 Miami first-round pick, unprotected. So if you're from the Spurs in this perspective and you're thinking about why didn't I give them the 15th overall pick this year, because I think Miami values that. I think they can get a really, really good piece at 15 that they want. You're getting a 2029 overall first-round pick. This is the first-round pick that when you look at the Spurs and they're good by 2029, and then you're like, how do the Spurs have another top 10 pick? From this trade right here. The rich get richer with this trade. Miami doesn't really value that first-round pick like the Spurs could value that first-round pick. Who knows what situation Miami's going to be in. And if you're Miami, yes, Jimmy Butler doesn't fit your timeline, but this kind of gives you a little bit of a young core. If you're Miami, of Keldon Johnson, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, Jaime Jaquez, Nikola Jovic. You could argue Nikola Jovic in this trade, but I just don't think you need to get a Keldon Johnson type at this point. So I think Duncan Robinson could be a great movement shooter next to a Victor Wembanyama. I can already see the handoffs and the different sets that Greg Popovich could run that could give Duncan Robinson, could give the Spurs a lot of different spacing, a lot of different looks for somebody who's really reinvented himself as a player, who is more effective putting the ball on the deck now. You add Kevin Love, who can be a great veteran next to Victor Wembanyama, who's somebody else who can play minutes for you in your rotation by coming off the bench and being able to space the floor even more. Kevin Love, if there's one thing he can still do is still shoot the three ball at a high clip. And then you're getting a late Miami Heat pick in 2029 that could be very, very valuable. And you could argue that maybe the Heat put a protection on this pick or whatever. I don't know what they would do if they would put a protection on that pick. I think it's a little weird. I think that's so based on team to team. But if you're looking at the Heat, then you have a lineup of Terry Rozier, Tyler Hero, Keldon Johnson, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo. Off your bench, you still have Caleb Martin, Jaime Jaquez, Josh Richardson, Thomas Bryant, Nikola Jovic, and you still have that 15th overall pick, which in my mock, I had them taking a Stephon Castle. I don't know if he slides that far, because in my part 2, when I'm thinking about my next mock, he probably doesn't slide that far, but even then, I like an Isaiah Collier here at this position. I like a Jared McCain off that bench for them. Devin Carter's a great pick. He seems like a Miami guy. So, looking at that, the Miami Heat could really position themselves with some depth and some more scoring and somebody that can do a little bit of everything in Keldon Johnson. And the Spurs could pick up another first-round pick to add to their stash. Duncan Robinson, who is making $19 million per for the next 2, but I feel like he can be a great addition to your core. And I feel like having somebody like a Duncan Robinson and a Kevin Love for that 1 year, you can't just have a team full of young guys. I feel like Duncan Robinson and Kevin Love could be great additions in the rotation for the Spurs, who have, you got to think, 2-4 picks in this year's draft. You can't just run a team of all young guys, and they're already in the market to try to get a Darius Garland or a DeJounte Murray or a Trae Young. So I think having the spacing of these two that can bring you and picking up a first for Keldon Johnson is pretty good value. Next team we are looking at, 76ers. Another interesting spot for the Sixers. Boatload of cap space this offseason. Man, for how bad the luck is with the 76ers, they are in such a great spot right now. They're in such a great spot with this draft, with the role players that they can get, the NBA-ready role players that they can get. They're in such a good spot with that, and I think they're in such a good spot cap-wise. So, I've heard the Jimmy Butler rumors, the Paul George rumors. I think we're past the point of adding an old star to an already decently, not even an old team. I'm trying to think. I don't think the old aging star gets them over the hump anymore. When you see what happened this season, Tyrese Maxey broke out, especially in the playoffs. Joel Embiid, we know the injury. We know the injury history. Why not, with all this cap space and still remaining draft capital, build this team up to where if Joel Embiid misses a month in the season, you're not falling to damn near the plan. So looking at this trade, they need to focus on depth instead of getting that star. If they're the only, like, and for my perspective, the only star you go get, if there's any world where you can get him, is LeBron James. I don't think Paul George puts you over the hump, in my opinion. I don't think Jimmy Butler gets you there, and he even had, both of those guys have injury concerns already, and you're going to pair him up with Joel Embiid, who has injury concerns of his own. I just don't think that's really a good mesh, especially with their age and how they're older they're getting. With what you're thinking, if I'm Philly and I'm building this team for next year, Tyrese Maxey's 23 years old. He's going to get the extension. He's going to get paid. We're not worried about that. Why would I not build with all this cap space and get some guys that can fit for the era after Embiid possibly and fit to help us win right now? Why won't I do both with all this cap space and this 16th overall pick? So looking at that, Utah Jazz. I have them getting Lauri Markkanen, who I feel like can fit beautifully next to a Joel Embiid with his spacing and his ability to rebound. And they have the money to extend him long term, depending on what he does get. And I have them getting Jordan Clarkson. Don't know if they're going to try to bring back Buddy Hield. He wasn't the greatest for them. So when you're looking at that, this is the number I'm focused on. $45 million left to use in free agency. That's going to be still huge. They have a couple trade exceptions in here that they can still use. They have a whole lot of shit that they can use. So looking at this, you're going to give the Utah Jazz a 16th overall pick, which the only guy I really like for the Sixers here is like probably Tristan da Silva. I've seen a lot of Isaiah Collier mocks, but like I don't know if they're gonna it's Nick Nurse, so you gotta think of the mindset of the coach. I don't know if he would really like them drafting a kind of a younger guard that's gonna need the ball in his hands. So I think them trading that pick and this 2026 first, or is it unprotected, going to the Jazz, and then this valuable 2029 Clippers pick. So you're getting 3 first. You're adding another pick in this year's draft if you're the Utah Jazz in 16, so you'll have 16 and 10. You'll have a 2026 first rounder unprotected, so already what you have in deep draft capital. You're adding a 2029 first rounder from the Clippers, who knows by that time what the Clippers are going to be looking like. For Lauri Markkanen, like I said previous videos, if you don't think you're going to extend him, you might as well trade him for something. You're going to get 3 first-round picks out of this, and Jordan Clarkson, who's been great for you guys, but he doesn't fill your timeline, and he is kind of stunting the growth of a Keontae George, even a Colin Sexton. They're going to have 2 first-round picks this year with this trade. And this opens up the door for like more Taylor Hendricks minutes, who was a pick for them last year. So looking at that, and you still have a John Collins, like they have a bunch of ways, avenues so that they can bolster up that draft capital. And I feel like if you're not going to extend Lauri Markkanen, you might as well trade him. You're getting 3 first-round picks out of this deal. I think it's a great trade for both sides. So the final trade is Sixers getting Lauri Markkanen and Jordan Clarkson, plus having the 45 M's left in free agency to use for the 16th overall pick, a 2026 first unprotected, and a 2029 first unprotected from the Clippers for going to the Jazz. Philadelphia is in a great, great spot, man. Great fucking spot. So next team, Indiana Pacers, right? So they're in a position to where just made the conference finals. Got to pay Pascal Siakam. I think they're going to overpay to keep him. 30 years old. But they're a team that's in an interesting spot that where you got to think on their playoff run. Didn't have Benedict Mathurin. He was hurt. Jarris Walker, who was a lottery pick for them, he hasn't really shined and got to play yet. So I'm looking at that. I'm like, if you bring back Obi Pascal, when is Jarris Walker ever going to get the ability to really grow and develop, right? Like, I think they have to pivot. You still have some draft capital to use. So I think they're going to go all in. I think they're going to feel like this offseason that they were in the conference finals, and if they had maybe another piece scoring wise, they would have been better suited, and they were in a lot of those games with Boston. How fitting would it be for them to swoop in and get a Mikal Bridges from the Knicks, who they just eliminated in a 7-game series, and they know the rumor is that they want Mikal Bridges to just make sense for the Knicks. How fitting would it be for the Nets, the Pacers, to swoop in and get him? And the Nets are getting a very, very good return. Kind of like the Jalen Green situation, they're getting young, established talent plus draft capital for Mikal Bridges. So you're going to get Benedict Mathurin, Jarris Walker. So it's basically like you drafted the past couple of years with these two guys. You're getting 36, 50, 51, and you're getting a 2028 first. So look at this. You're getting Mikal Bridges. Is this a lot? Is this a lot? Because like who else would they add? Now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, who else would they add here, right? Who else on this roster would they add? Like Cam Johnson, but you have Siakam and Obi already. Probably that you're gonna bring both back. Dennis Schroeder doesn't make sense because you still have T.J. McCollum and Nembhard. Dorian Finney-Smith could be an option because he could play the 3 for you. I think that could be interesting. I don't know if that works, but the thing is with that, you want to have money to still pay Pascal Siakam, and eventually you're going to have to pay Andrew Nembhard, I think. Where's Nembhard at? So he's you still got him on 2 years. So I mean, I personally think you stay pat, still have enough cap space to mess around with, and not take on Dorian Finney-Smith to have more money to pay Pascal Siakam and Obi Toppin and just bring them two back. But when you're looking at this team, like Ben Shepherd gave you good minutes, you still have Nembhard. They're a really deep team, and I feel like just adding Mikal Bridges to what they already have going, it might be a lot. You may be able to take this first-round pick in 2028 away. But looking at it in terms of Benedict Mathurin, who is a proven scorer, for sure. He could be interesting to see develop fully in Brooklyn with all that kind of. There would be nobody in his way, really. I mean, other than a Cam Johnson. Jarris Walker could be a building block piece for them. He could really go to Brooklyn and develop because with what the Pacers are doing now, he's really never going to see the proper playing time he probably needs. Then you're getting 3 second-round picks from a Brooklyn Nets team perspective that doesn't even have a first this year. You have 3 chances and kind of a deeper second round, in my opinion, to really add some talent there. And you're getting a 2028 first-round pick unprotected for Mikal Bridges, who he's just not what they need. He's a good player for sure. He has number 2 or a number 3 who can give you sparks of a number 1 on some nights. But he's not somebody. I don't think he's somebody you build around. But now, if you're looking from the Pacers' point of view, Tyrese Halliburton, Nembhard, Mikal Bridges, Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner, and off your bench, you're not losing any depth. You still have T.J. McConnell. You're moving Aaron Nesmith to the bench, where I think he's better suited to be off the bench and just be a hound defensively. You still have Isaiah Jackson. You have Ben Shepherd. You're so deep. You can really go 8 or 9 deep. You're gonna have an Obi Toppin still, possibly if you want to bring him back. I don't think he's gonna break the bank on you, especially if you can bring him back. I mean, your bench unit's gonna be so nice. Even putting Nesmith off to the bench and adding somebody like Mikal Bridges, who can be your number 1 on some nights, great as a 2 or a 3 next to a Tyrese Halliburton. And I feel like what you're giving up, if you're the Pacers, it might be a lot of draft capital. But you gotta think your team is still relatively super young. Pascal Siakam's 30 years old, but Mikal Bridges is 27, fits your timeline, and is ready to win now. Tyrese Halliburton's still 24 years old. Miles Turner's 28, and Nesmith is 24. T.J. McConnell's older. Ben Shepherd's young. Nembhard's young. You have a great foundation of young talent to where, if you're, these picks, you're not anybody you draft isn't in your rotation. But on the Brooklyn Nets, those guys that they draft with these draft picks, they're probably going to be in their rotation, plus a Benedict Mathurin and a Jarris Walker. So it makes sense for both sides. Next team, I have Orlando Magic. This is an interesting one. I kind of talked about it in my 15 players that I think should be traded. kind of like explaining what my mindset is behind this. Like, if you're the Pistons, what are you? You're gonna have to extend Cade Cunningham. Have you seen? I'm not putting this on Cade Cunningham and like they're like them being bad at all, but I'm thinking more so in the mindset of you extending him. Is there anything that's gonna change for you giving up more of your cap? I guess I just think they are better suited to move off of a Cade Cunningham. I'm like, why? Like, why am I not hearing more rumors about him possibly on the block? If I'm Cade Cunningham, I'm begging to be traded. But like, looking at them, like, God, they just have such a weird kind of thing going on. Kind of when I tried to mock that trade for them earlier in the video, it's like you have Asar, Jaden Ivey, Marcus Sasser, Cade, like that are all relative, like are all super young. Cade's only 22 years old. You're gonna have to extend him, but like the return you could get to kind of build up and build a better future for your roster could be better suited if you trade Cade Cunningham. And what you've seen in Cade Cunningham throughout this certain point in the year, where you're in a year where you're looking to extend your franchise guy, and like you just came off the worst year in your franchise in like NBA history for a team, and you didn't even get the first overall pick. So it's like you're kind of in the same situation as Houston, but it's so different because like they're in a world where like Jalen Green's up for an extension, but they just had a great year to where they could pivot and move Jalen Green. But like the Pistons are in a position where like if you lock Cade Cunningham up long term, is there really going to be any silver lining for this team to really be better? I just don't really see that happening. I feel like the return that they could get for Cade Cunningham is massive. So I have the Orlando Magic getting Cade Cunningham to pair up a big three of Cade, Franz, Paolo. So what are you getting, right? Same kind of situation with the Pacers in Orlando. They're kind of ahead of schedule, but I think they're still in a world where they can be aggressive. Cade doesn't kill your cap space. You're still going to have a good amount of cap space to work with this offseason. So looking at what they're going to give up, they're going to give up Anthony Black, Jet Howard, two guys that really aren't even in their rotation, and they're still super, super young. The team is still super, super young. So you give up both of them. You're giving up 18th pick. You're giving up 2025 Denver pick, which is probably going to end up being good for you. It has a light protection on it. You're going to give them this Phoenix and Washington 2026 pick for Cade Cunningham. So if you're the Pistons, you're getting Jet Howard, Anthony Black, two lottery picks from the Orlando Magic who have really good upside and potential. You're getting the 18th overall pick. You're getting a 2025 first rounder that you don't have a first round pick next year if you're Detroit, looking at that. So this kind of gives you an option, just the ability to draft in a loaded draft class next year in 2025. And then you're adding a 2026 via Washington or Phoenix. So you're adding that for Cade Cunningham. And even then, if you're looking at, like, if you want another, maybe you try to get this 2026 pick from Detroit too, giving you another option. I feel like this is probably better. So in this trade, Magic are getting Cade Cunningham to form a big three of Cade, Franz, and Paolo. And then they're still going to have Jalen Suggs, Jonathan Isaac, Wendell Carter around them. And they still have cap space to go add some more shooting and more depth. But if you're the Pistons, you're getting Anthony Black, Jet Howard, 18th overall pick, the 2025 first round pick, 2026 swap via Denver, Phoenix or Washington, and a 2026 first rounder unprotected for Cade Cunningham, which I feel like the Magic would have no problem whatsoever extending. Next team, the Cavs. So Cavs are in an interesting situation. Once again, I feel like you have to pick two of them. I think you can't pick one of Mobley, Allen, D. Mitch, and Garland. I feel like two of the four get moved, and I just don't think Evan Mobley is one of the two, so it's really two of the three. So it's like, I think Darius Garland is definitely one of the guys that could be traded. We've heard rumors of San Antonio wanting to pair him and Victor Wembanyama up. I like that for the Spurs. But if I'm the Cavs, you want to trade Darius Garland to a team where you have a solid enough return to really work with. So if I'm the Nets, I can go get my franchise point guard locked up for the next 4 years who's still really, really young in Darius Garland. at 24 years old, you could pair up with Nicholas Claxton, Cam Thomas, and you're going to give the Cavs a Mikal Bridges, a Dennis Schroeder, and a Dorian Finney-Smith. You're going to add in Karis LeVert to the trade. You're going to get the 20th pick. Like I said, I've kind of really started at the video saying that I'm going to say this a lot about the Brooklyn Nets. They don't have a first-round pick this year at all. So you add a first-round pick and getting the 20th overall pick in this year's draft, and you're getting a young franchise point guard in Darius Garland for Dorian Finney-Smith, Dennis Schroeder, and Mikal Bridges, who fit the Cavs a lot better than what was already going to happen. Because I feel like you could say, oh, why is Jared Allen on the deal? They have Nicholas Claxton. Doesn't make sense for them if they're going to just bring Nicholas Claxton back on a long-term deal. Like, I just think this trade makes the most sense for Brooklyn because I feel like people always sleep on Darius Garland because he's a franchise-level point guard, and you have him for 4 years on a long-term contract. Yes, it's a lot, but you're Brooklyn. You got to take swings like this. You're adding Karis LeVert, who had the best years of his career, has a Brooklyn net. And then you're adding the 20th overall pick where you could pick up maybe a guy with a little bit more upside. Maybe you take a swing on like a Keyshawn George. Maybe you get a good upside in him. And like I had Tristan Da Silva going to the Cavs at 20. Maybe you switch it up. Maybe you try to get this is a weird spot for them. Maybe you try to get like a Johnny Furphy to add some spacing for you. But if you're looking at what the Nets really should try to do here is get Darius Garland. I think Darius Garland is somebody you can build your franchise around and kind of be that piece that connects everything all together and can start this rebuild because Darius Garland is only 24 years old. For your Cavs, Mikal Bridges next to Donovan Mitchell, you add Dennis Schroeder to start or come off the bench for you, and Dorian Finney-Smith gives them all the wing depth they need on a team that hasn't had wing depth in so long, it feels like. So you're probably running out Schroeder, D-Mitch, Mikal. You could say Dorian Finney-Smith at the 4 and Evan Mobley at the 5, depending on if you move Jared Allen, which I think is something that they will pivot and do this offseason. But the final trade is Mikal Bridges, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Dennis Schroeder to the Cavs for Darius Garland, Karis LeVert, and the 20th overall pick. I feel like this just works out for both sides, especially the Cavs who kind of want to win now and kind of need a new look on their roster. So you're adding Mikal, Dorian Finney, and Dennis Schroeder for Darius Garland, your 20th, and Karis LeVert, but you still have Jared Allen to trade. You still could get something for Jared Allen for sure. Possibly Brandon Ingram. Who knows? I've heard a lot of rumors about that. Bucks, tough team here. Tough team to really trade for, find mocks for in this realm because they're in cap hell. Don't really have a lot of avenues to get better. I don't see them moving Chris Middleton at all, especially with what he did in this playoffs. I feel like he's still the perfect complementary piece next to a Dame and Giannis. Brook Lopez is an interesting one. So in this trade, we're going to get really, really interesting here. I'm going to walk it through. They're going to get in contact with the Wizards. The Wizards are going to trade the Bucks Kyle Kuzma, Corey Kispert, Landry Shamet, 52nd overall pick. You still have the 33rd overall pick if you're the Bucks. You're going to send the Wizards 23. Brook Lopez, Pat Connaughton, Marjan, Andre Jackson Jr., and the 23rd overall pick. So if you're looking at this trade for the Bucks, you're adding Kyle Kuzma, who is a wing that can get you do a little bit of everything for you. You can run bigger lineups where you have Dame. Dame, Chris Middleton, Kyle Kuzma, Giannis, and Bobby Portis. And then looking at that, I understand you're having a hole giving up Brook Lopez, who provides that spacing for you at that 5 spot. I think Bobby Portis can step in and do a good enough job to where, you can be fine. Like I said, they have an early second round pick, and they're getting another one in this trade to where you're like, okay, we can get like an Adem Bona who can give them so much more athleticism than a Brook Lopez at that point in his career at that backup 5 position. So looking at that, they can really add and address that big man spot in the draft, I feel like. And with a Giannis and a Bobby Portis already established in that front court, I feel like having a rookie can really benefit learning from them too. So looking at that, I have Kyle Kuzma, who can do a little bit of everything: score, defend, rebound, play make. He can do a little bit of everything for the Bucks, and he's a younger, athletic wing. You're getting Landry Shamet, who I feel like can be a solid Malik Beasley replacement. I feel like he played his way into the Bucks not being able to have the money to bring him back. He can kind of be the replacement for that on a good 2-year, $11 million deal. You're adding Corey Kispert, who can be a sniper off that bench, kind of giving you a replacement for Pat Connaughton at a younger age, who can get a better 3-point shooter at this point. He can give you all the spacing you need for Giannis. And then you're picking up the 52nd overall pick, who you can add some big man depth and possibly add a backup guard. When you're looking at the Bucks, it's like you add more versatility with Kyle Kuzma being able to kind of bounce with Middleton minutes like as well. Because like we've seen Chris Middleton have his injury problems, I feel like Kyle Kuzma can kind of be that pseudo replacement in a way. I just feel like the Bucks need to get younger and more athletic. I feel like all three of these guys give them something they need: shooting and Landry Shamet and Corey Kispert. Corey Kispert is interesting because he can play 2 through 4 depending on the lineup. Kyle Kuzma can do a little bit of everything for you. And if you're the Wizards, you're picking up another first-round pick, 23 and 26. You're getting 2 young guys that have potential. They just aren't playing on Milwaukee. You're getting Brook Lopez, who could be flipped. You have Pat Connaughton, who can be flipped with Brook Lopez as well for more draft capital and what they want to do. I could also see Brook Lopez on a 1-year deal, giving the Washington Wizards good production. So looking at this, I think it just makes sense for the Bucks to go get younger, go get some shooting, go get some more athleticism, because they're an older team, and I feel like these 3 guys fit perfectly with what they want to do. Next team, the last team we have for this, because we're not doing one with the Boston Celtics, New York Knicks. This is kind of a real simple one. The Brooklyn Nets, Mikal Bridges. I know he's been traded a lot in this video, but he fits well with so many teams with his contract. But this is the main target for the Knicks. This is the main target for the Knicks. You've heard it all kind of postseason and all season long about the Villanova boys. So looking at this, they are going to have to overpay if they want to get Mikal Bridges from the Nets. They're going to have to overpay because just that rivalry they have going on there in New York. So looking at this, Mikal Bridges, Dorian Finney-Smith for Bogdanovich, Mitchell Robinson, 24, 25, and 38, and a 2025 first from Milwaukee 1 through 4 protected, and a 2027 first from the Knicks unprotected for Mikal Bridges and Dorian Finney-Smith. So if you're looking at this, they're getting 4 first-round picks in a second, Mitchell Robinson, who's a young center that could easily flip, Bogdanovich, who just makes the salary work. He's at the tail end of his career. You could easily buy him out for Mikal Bridges and Dorian Finney-Smith. And if you're the Knicks and you can land Mikal Bridges and Dorian Finney-Smith, wow. Then you're running Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Julius Randle, Isaiah Hartenstein, probably if you have to bring him back because you're going to have money freed up from getting rid of Mitch Rob. And you could probably easily make the money work with Isaiah Hartenstein gone. So you're adding Jalen Brunson, Mikal, OG, Julius Randle, let's say Isaiah Hartenstein for the sake of it. You're having Josh Hart, DiVincenzo, Deuce McBride, Dorian Finney-Smith off your bench. In a tip system, those are 9 guys that are Tom Thibodeau guys. This would position the Knicks to possibly be the best team in the Eastern Conference. One of the best teams in the NBA. For sure. For sure. The only thing that they would need to address is like the center position where you could get, like I said, for the sake of things we said, you bring Isaiah Hartenstein back, figure out a way to make that happen, and bring back OG Anunoby, of course. So looking at that, I mean, you're going to have to overpay for Mikal Bridges, but you add Mikal Bridges to this team if they're healthy, man. And what they were able to do with them not healthy, it makes me think of the world if they add Mikal Bridges and Dorian Finney-Smith to an already team that is almost made it to the Eastern Conference Finals this year, and they weren't even healthy. So looking at that, you're Brooklyn, you get 4 first-round picks, 2 guys that you could easily flip, like 2 back-to-back picks in this year's draft. Like, it's a no-brainer if you're the Nets. I understand you're trading Mikal Bridges to a rival in the Knicks, but you're in a rebuild. It's going to be years before you're back into a position to where you're competitive with the Knicks probably. So getting as much draft capital as you can is just beneficial. You're getting a total of 5 picks in this trade alone. And that's not even including all the other stuff you have in Cam Johnson, Dennis Schroeder. Even if you, depending on what you want to do with Cam Thomas, like there's avenues to really go down. But that's kind of wrapping up the Eastern Conference. One trade idea I have for every team in the NBA. We broke down the Eastern Conference today. We'll break down the Western Conference in a video soon. Getting into that, thank you guys for tuning into the Barrel Talk Podcast. Hope you tune in to future episodes.